Okay, to round off this direct, we're going to have a content discussion, and we're going to be talking about the game of the moment, Resident Evil 9 Requiem. And yeah, this was a game where we had the review code relatively early. PC came in a bit later. It was a project that was quite difficult to deal with because there were some shifting embargoes and conditions on stuff like that. So we didn't actually have any content ready for the embargo because the content we were planning suddenly didn't fit the embargo conditions anymore. Obviously, there's a lot more surrounding that. There's the Switch 2 discussion that's come up about that. I think people are very, very excited by that particular conversion of the game. And also the fact that it is using the new version of PSSR in the PlayStation 5 Pro version. And I actually think that's probably where we should begin, John, because obviously we've got content out. We were briefed by Sony ahead of time that the new PSSR was coming to Resident Evil Requiem, but what we didn't quite realize was that it was actually in the review code that we were already given. And it was kind of like, well, we were sort of saying to Sony, this is, it's already looking really, really great in the review code we've got. Are you sure it's PSSR1 in there or the first generation version? And there was a bit of back and forth on that, but it actually turns out that it is using the new version of PSSR. It does look fantastic. And I've been quite interested to see the reaction to our content on that, John, specifically that we never actually said it was a particular version of PSSR because we kind of knew it was the new one, but couldn't say at that point because we were under NDA.
We had to dance around it, but like even without that, like it was pretty obvious. And instantly unloading it up, I was like, wow, the image quality is like really good in this. Like this is awesome looking. And so I did a pixel count, and it came out to be just above 1080p. And I was like, seems really okay. It's got to be one of these upsamplers. And we started debating, like, is this the new PSSR? Like, this seems that kind of checks out, right? And we didn't know for a bit until we got that confirmation. But right from the beginning, if I had known, I would have if I hadn't known, I would have guessed, yeah, this is probably new PSSR.
It's tricky though, right? Because it's operating at a sort of 1080p or slightly above 1080p sweet spot where, typically upscalers do work well. And the first generation PSSR, there've been some titles running at similar resolutions
that look okay.
That look pretty good, right? So there was always that sort of element of doubt in there where you couldn't actually call it until you had confirmation.
But yeah. The other thing is we didn't have the PC version right away.
Yeah.
And that was key because so I noticed some slight blotchiness and like some issues in ray tracing, which is something that PSSR has exhibited a lot, right? But I wasn't sure. I was like, is this the PSSR or is this the denoiser? And then and we couldn't check any other version because, as we found out, no other console has ray tracing at all. Right? So
I think the other thing, of course, is that when you look at the gulf in image quality between PS5 and PS5 Pro, it's gigantic. But they didn't really help themselves by using what looks like FSR1.
That's a little. I feel like there could have been something better there, but the key is with the noise and the RT that turned out to be, once we got it on PC, it's like, oh, Capcom's denoiser, that's the way it looks, right? PC has the same problem if you're not using ray reconstruction, which as usual, if you're using the path tracer, ray reconstruction is part of that package. You have to use it, right? So, and obviously ray reconstruction runs circles around their denoiser because that's what it does. It's really freaking good. So it looks much more stable. But yeah, so we went through all of that and figured out everything. And the FSR1 thing was sort of like an educated guess based on the fact that the PC only offers FSR1, modern FSR, and DLSS, right? As upscalers.
I think it's quite interesting that the audience were actually quite excited by the footage and kind of suggesting that it was a new version of PSSR, whereas we were pretty much the only people in the press to bring it up. It's quite interesting.
And it was fun to see the reactions, and I love all the guessing people were doing, and I'm just like, yep, you guys got it, you know it. Like that's cool, that's smart. People are paying attention to this stuff. They're excited and they see it. They can see the results for themselves. Like, this looks really good. Right? And the footage, I think speaks for itself. It's super clean and sharp. It has a level of stability and like clarity that was usually not there in a lot of the PSSR titles, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 version of it. The video we've done there is doing big numbers. I'm really, really happy about that. I thought we got some good content out there. Oliver, it's continuing discussion about what we should be comparing the Switch 2 version to.
I'm familiar. Oh, every time now I'm engaging with these comments. Now I'm reading them for the purposes of this section. So perhaps I'm getting my my mental faculties drained slightly. But no, scrolling through my Twitter today and YouTube, a lot of the feedback seems to be fairly constructive. Seems to be a lot of people who are asking for frame rate caps, which is a reasonable takeaway from the video. It's certainly something that I tried to emphasize in the video, because I think some capping solutions would greatly improve the situation on Switch 2. And then there's a lot of commentary from people who really don't like Nintendo consoles, who think the video proves Switch 2 is a world apart from PS5, and then corresponding commentary from people with the complete opposite view, that PS5 and Switch 2 are virtually identical. So that's always funny, because like they're just characterizations of the same underlying data. Like no one is really disputing the veracity of the details in the video, the information in the video. They're just spinning it in two totally different ways. They live in two totally different realities, which I think is funny. The whole debate about what is the appropriate console to compare to, and indeed the consensus answer, it seems from many people who seem to be big fans of Switch, and I'm a big fan of Switch myself, but seem to be very partisan about it, is that the PS5 is the correct platform to compare to, and not the Series S. And I've certainly heard arguments both ways. In that video we actually covered it primarily on PS5 and a little bit on Series S. But I might have inverted it, actually. I'm not quite sure what I would have done, but I might have inverted it if I actually had access to the Series S code, because they were device locked on Series S for this game, which is unusual on the Series consoles. So my consoles were not approved, John's were, so it did not end up working out on my side. In any case, that whole debate, I do find it interesting. I do find it kind of charming. But in the end, I mean, I don't know what way you want to look at it. I mean, it's certainly worse than Series S in some key respects in terms of performance, but better in terms of image quality. That's exciting. And then relative to PS5, it is similar in some respects. It's losing out on all the metrics, but it kind of looks similar enough, which maybe speaks to that kind of Twitter, YouTube on the phone problem that we spoke of some weeks ago. But, it also indicates the game is actually really good on Switch 2. And I think it does look quite beautiful on Switch 2. Certainly a more attractive game than I thought it would be. And the graphics were a point of high praise. It seems throughout the entire ecosystem of people who are responding to our videos saying that the game looks beautiful. So I definitely find myself in agreement with the peanut gallery on that one. But yeah, the only thing I would really comment on beyond that is like the embargo situation resulted in some weird pacing for our videos. And I know some people were complaining, oh, why don't we have a video on embargo day? We did have videos ready for embargo day, but they were not compliant with the embargo conditions. And then, of course, on the 27th, the release of the PSSR piece. Again, these are all kinds of things that are outside of our hands, but I thought we tried to make it work, and I thought we tried to release lots of content, and I think hopefully, I don't know how well it's gone. hopefully it's gone well, as I say this, not knowing exactly how well everything has gone, but yeah, just kind of a weird set of conditions in this game, and then a kind of interesting commentary on this game, but not entirely negative commentary on this game either.
Yeah, I think in terms of the embargo stuff, it was just incompatible with the content we wanted to put out. So we could have put out a video on embargo day, but it would have been unsatisfactory to us as creators. I think that's fair enough, John, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, to me that was important. Like, we did talk about that, and yeah, when you don't go on that initial day, you definitely lose out on some views, I'd say, to a degree. But
yeah,
I really wanted to do that full video, right? And like cutting it down wouldn't have been, I think it would have hurt what we did, right? So we came up with that strategy of doing two videos in one day.
Yeah, it typically can have an impact on the content we do put out. But in this case, I think people were just super, super hungry for information. My views on the Switch 2 situation, well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I think DLSS has basically been a game changer for Switch 2. If you can put out a game with a 540p internal resolution that is looking better than a game running at 720p on a Series S, that's just phenomenal. I mean, some of the shots that you guys had, like far off distance shots, where even then the lower base resolution of Switch 2 looked better via DLSS. That's nuts. The concept of a 360p resolution looking good on a handheld screen with DLSS going up to 720p. Again, mind-bending. It's just like really, really good. It really does sort of rebalance expectations of the performance level of the machine. In terms of the whole, what should you be comparing against? I think it's basically the relevant platforms that we choose that we want to show, right? And I think for PlayStation 5, it's an interesting one because a lot of the audience want to see how it compares to what is effectively the standard set for the generation. But you've got to be cognizant of the fact that you haven't got an RTX 2070 Super in your Switch 2. So there are going to be cutbacks. So it's down to basically stuff like DLSS and stuff like how the developer makes nips and tucks that is actually sort of the focus there. But Series S is the most natural comparison point in terms of a machine that it really does have a significantly more raw horsepower than the Switch 2. It is pushing more pixels, it is pushing more frames. But at the same time, because of DLSS, there is that kind of really interesting comparison point there in terms of how the games actually present versus what the technical specifications suggest. That was really, really interesting. I thought it was a really good piece of content there. We still haven't got our PC stuff out yet, but that is coming. We're going to be taking a look at path tracing, optimized settings, console comparisons, all of that. But yeah, I was really, really happy with our Resident Evil Requiem stuff, and there's quite a lot more to come actually. Final thoughts on that, John?
Beyond all the stuff we reviewed, I think the game's just freaking awesome. It's one of the best. It's definitely one of the best Resident Evil games, I would say. Now it's going to take time to settle to see where it falls, but my top games, I still would put Resident Evil 4, both the original and then the remake, the very top of my list, with Resident Evil 2 remake, the Resident Evil 1 remake. Those are up there as well. I loved RE7 as well. Requiem is definitely in that ballpark, which is to say a lot. It's really, really cool. And it's a big game, and they do some cool stuff, and I like revisiting certain areas from the past with a new coat of paint, so to speak, or an old coat of paint, I guess, more accurately. It's cool. It's really fun. So yeah, great game, great tech, and I'm consistently amazed at how Capcom's able to produce so many games so consistently at such a high quality, while seemingly keeping budgets in check and being happy with the results. The issues with Monster Hunter Wilds was a rare miss on their side, I think, right? And they know it. That doesn't happen much with Capcom, and I think they're gonna strive to ensure that doesn't happen as much as possible. So yeah, good work from them.
Okay, final thoughts, Oliver?
Yeah, Monster Hunter Wilds, that was a game that was kind of unattractive on a number of levels, and it had all kinds of performance problems. And one thing that I liked about that game was that it had a good PS5 Pro version, at least insofar as they, put PSSR in there, which was actually a better solution than their with TAA plus FSR1, which is a recurring theme. And it had the RT reflections. That was quite nice. But then you look at the PS5 Pro implementation in this game, and it's like, wow, first PSSR2 title, RT reflections, RTGI, looking superb, looking head and shoulders, I would say, above every other console platform. Still, the PC with path tracing is a good level above it, but still, this is representing the peak of what you can expect from a console experience in this game, and it's just really satisfying to look at. And I agree, the game itself is quite entertaining. I'm quite taken by it, especially the Grace segments I particularly liked. I would actually agree with John that Resident Evil 4, in particular the original Resident Evil 4, would be my favorite Resident Evil title. And Resident Evil 7 would be kind of somewhat behind there in terms of my second. But I think of the Resident Evil games I've played, this would definitely be a strong number 3, at least from the content that I've played so far. It's quite an entertaining game that blends expertly third person, first person, survival horror, action horror, whatever. It's just a really superb game that I think people like, and it also looks terrific on just about anything you can run it on, including a Switch 2.